This episode of Camera Position is brought to you by Audible. Please visit audiblepodcast.com/camera position for your free audiobook download. Hi, this is Jeff Curto, and welcome to episode number 77 of Camera Position, a podcast about the creative side of photography. Well, I have to admit that oftentimes my eyes are bigger than my stomach, or my eyes are bigger than my ability to produce Camera Position as regularly as I want to. I know that many of you out there listen to Brooks Jensen's excellent Lens Work podcast, and I had a nice chat with Brooks a couple of weeks ago at the Photo Lucida portfolio review, and we both admitted to the fact that we go in fits and starts on the podcasting thing. When we have some time, we produce a few podcasts and release them over a period of a few days, and then sometimes we'll go for several weeks without recording a podcast. So I'm sorry for those of you who are out there waiting with bated breath for this next installment of the Photographer's Roadmap project planning process. So we'll jump right in here and see where we wind up. The next part of this photographer's roadmap and project planning is all about production. Now, so far we've been thinking about photography. We've been sort of thinking about our projects, thinking about what it is that we're interested in, where it is that we're going with our project. And now the next step is to actually put that into practice and to establish production needs, habits, and goals. Now, I'm assuming that everyone who is listening here has gone through the last couple of episodes of Camera Position and has taken a look at what it is that they care about, and has also kind of thought about how to create an idea, and has begun to look at the idea of passion and mission. You've written that mission statement. You have an idea of where this project is going to wind up, what it's going to say, why it's important to you. And so now you have a project fully in mind. And so what we want to do now is put that project into production. Once you have a project set up and in your head, something you want to complete, now we're going to actually make it. But I'd like to kind of take a look at ways in which making it can become a little bit easier and a little bit more logical for many of you who have a hard time getting that project off the ground. How do you make time to make photographs? I suppose, how do you make time to make podcasts would be another question, but in this particular case, how do you make time to make photographs? Life is busy, and sometimes our creative lives get interrupted by our practical lives. Even if you're in business as a photographer, sometimes the day-to-day work of keeping your business running gets in the way of working out the best possible solutions for your clients. And keeping your clients happy is a good thing, because creating photographs costs money, and we need to know how much it's costing us to produce a product for our clients or for any other audience, whether we are professional photographers working with clients or photographers working for ourselves with the hope that our creative outlet will be attractive to someone else. So this podcast is intended to help you get a handle on how you work, how you organize your time, and how you can keep on track with the project in terms of expenditure of time and money. So first off, your project's needs. What does your project need from you in order to succeed? How much time and money will your project consume? This is probably one of the hardest questions to answer, especially if you've not done much active project planning before. Before you are able to provide a guesstimate of how many hours, not days or weeks, but hours, and that's important. We'll talk about why in a few minutes. It will take you to accomplish your project. The more projects you do, the easier it gets to estimate the amount of time it will take to accomplish a particular set of tasks. For now, try to make a guess at how long it will take you to finish the project. Don't worry about the financial costs at this point. Just look at the time and try to give yourself an idea of how much time you'll need. So what I'd like you to do is break that time down into some specific areas. The first one is research, looking for the the project, some of the stuff that we've already done in these project planning podcasts, thinking about the project, thinking about where the project is going to go. So research. Scouting and setup. How are you going to make the photographs? Where are you going to make the photographs? Do you need to set up sets? Do you need to construct something? And how much time is that going to take in hours? Shooting. Quite frankly, in many cases, the shooting component of the project is oftentimes the least time consuming, but shooting and, of course, potentially reshooting, making photographs, looking at the results, and then creating new photographs from the results that you've learned, the results that you've seen. Certainly, shooting and reshooting. How long is that going to take? Again, the time measured in hours. Editing and sequencing. How long is it going to take you to edit and sequence the images? Editing, of course, presumes that you have digital photographs and you're editing on the computer, or film-based photographs, and once they are developed, then you're editing them using contact sheets or some other method of editing those images. Then sequencing the images so that you have some idea of how big the project is going to be in scope. Retouching and darkroom work. How much work do you need to spend retouching or editing the images, or working in the darkroom to realize those final prints that you're using and creating in the darkroom space? And then finishing or post-production. What will happen to these pictures? Are they going to be matted and framed? How much time will that take? How many hours will that consume of your life, of matting the images, framing the images, and getting them ready for presentation? And then lastly, writing. Writing or other activities that will surround the sort of marketing or conceptualization of this piece. Writing an artist statement, thinking about where you're going to be placing this work, so forth and so on. So quickly recapping: research, scouting and setup, shooting and reshooting, editing and sequencing, retouching and darkroom work, finishing and post-production, and then writing sort of after the process is completed. And what I'd like you to do is make a guesstimate. Literally try to think about how long will this project consume in terms of hours, and breaking it down into those categories I think may help you. So once you have kind of determined a length of time that this project will consume, the next sort of step, at least I think, is to figure out what your work habits are. Now, this is tough because everybody in the world works differently. Everybody is efficient in different ways, and your work habits are really a big part of your life. So how do you spend your time in a day? How do you organize that time? The answers to these questions can help you determine appropriate times of day and lengths of time for you to devote to your photographic projects. So what I'd like you to do is write out your typical daily schedule. Don't be too terribly specific. So breakfast, not an itemized menu of what you have for breakfast, but what do you do? What sort of lay out your day from the time your feet hit the floor out of bed in the morning to the time that your head hits the pillow at night, and kind of give yourself an idea of how you spend your day: morning, noon, afternoon, and evening. Now, once you've done that, once you've gone through and really, and again, just generally laid out your day, how much time do you spend at work if you have a day job? How much time do you spend with family? How much time do you spend cooking? How much time do you spend organizing yourself? So forth and so on. So those kinds of daily activities is what I'm looking for you to do. And again, how much time in hours do each of those things sort of consume? The next step is to examine that list and look for periods of time that you can spend on your photographic project. Obviously, everyone needs some downtime and some time where you're not actually doing anything, a little veg out time, but everyone has time that they spend in ways that might not be the most productive. So look at how you spend time on a typical day and find, say, 30 minutes that you could spend working on your project. If you can schedule yourself to do things like wake up, get to school, get to work, whatever it is that you're doing, you can schedule yourself to spend a minimum of 30 minutes or 60 or 90 a day on something you are passionate about. If you were to spend 30 minutes a day, every day, over, say, a 3-month period, what you'd wind up with at the end of those 3 months is somewhere between 50 and 60 hours of work that you could spend on creating a project. And that's a fairly sizable amount of time. So the next question then is this enough? Does the time that you have sort of scavenged together out of your daily work schedule, your daily life schedule, as it were, does that time match up with your estimate of how long the project will take to complete? How many hours can you scrounge yourself out of your day? Hour, half hour, 30 minutes, 15 minutes? How long can you scrounge out of your day? And then how does that match up with your project's needs? And again, look at this idea of kind of going at this from the backwards end, kind of coming through the process of thinking about how long the project will consume, and then figuring out where you can find the time to create the project. And I know you guys just as well as I know myself. There are many things that I do during a day where I am not as efficient as I could be, where I could get something done in a short period of time and consume more time doing photographic projects or, as we've discovered, podcasting. So that whole idea of work habits and negotiating with yourself to scale back the number of hours you'll need to spend each day, or to scale up the number of hours you'll need to spend each day, and in order to find a few extra minutes in a day. The next really critical component here is adding that time to your schedule. Adding that time to your schedule, habitualizing the time that you're going to spend working on your photographic projects. And now, again, everyone's different, but what I've found for my own self is that if I habitualize a time that I set aside for being a creative photographer, I can get more done. I can get more projects completed. I can get more contacts made with galleries. I can do more of the kind of things that help advance my photography if I schedule that time. So the best solution is to try to spend the same 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, hour and a half every day. Say every morning after you finish breakfast, or every evening after you do the dishes, doing work on your project. And having a particular time that becomes your time for photography turns those extra minutes that you found in your schedule into a habit that will persist in your daily schedule. So plan it. Put it in your calendar. If you use some sort of calendar, physical calendar or electronic calendar, calendarize it. Put yourself, what I do is on my calendar on my computer, I set a little alarm in there to remind myself that this is now my time for photography. So I will work on my project for X number of minutes every day at such and such a clock. So again, putting this down in a conceptual way so that you know that this is time that you will spend working on a project that is for your creative photographic self. And again, it doesn't sound very creative to schedule creativity, but quite frankly, in our lives, the way our lives run these days, it is in fact a very important part of learning to be a photographer, learning to be creative, is scheduling ourselves to be a creative person. Now, if you are operating as a photographer all the time, every day, a professional photographer, you know that, by golly, there's not a whole lot of time in the day to be the creative professional photographer. You're talking with clients, you're following up with clients, you're billing, you're bidding, you're estimating, you're doing all of those things. So conceptualizing, contractualizing with yourself, as it were, this time so that you know that you'll be working at that time is very important. Now, I'm experimenting with something here a little bit in camera position. I have recently become an addict of Audible.com. Audible.com, a terrific online resource, the internet's leading provider of spoken audio entertainment, providing digital versions of tens of thousands of audiobooks for download to your computer, to your iPod, to your other MP3 player. And Audible has offered to become a sponsor of Camera Position. So we're going to test this out and see how it works and see what whether this this works out as a positive benefit. But I'm telling you, a positive benefit for me has been becoming involved in Audible and listening to books. Dreams from My Father, Barack Obama's book, is the one that's currently on my iPod and currently the one that I'm listening to in the car as I drive back and forth to work. And wow, listening to Barack Obama read his own words is pretty remarkable. It's a book I'd wanted to read before, but hadn't gotten around to it. And Audible has over 50,000 titles to choose from, and you can get a free audiobook download when you sign up. So what you can do to make this possible, if you go to audiblepodcast.com/camera position, you'll be taken through a set of steps that will sign you up for Audible. Now, you'll have to give your credit card number. However, this deal is cancelable at any point, and you can back out of it at any point, and you still get to keep your free download, your free Audible podcast or Audible book download. So audiblepodcast.com/camera position. Go check it out and let me know what you think about Audible and let me know what you're listening to, because I'm always interested in listening to some new literature and so forth and so on. So next up for me is The Great Gatsby. Many of you know that it's one of my favorite books, and I'm really intrigued to hear someone read it to me as opposed to reading it myself for a change. So there we go with a little bit of sponsorship from audible.com, and thanks to the good folks at Audible for setting us up and getting Camera Position listeners a free Audible download. So the next part of this process is goal setting. And goal setting really should be a part of your time management strategy for your project. It's important to set goals in small increments. Man, I'm telling you, if you don't set goals in small increments, if you say, I'm going to make a 57 picture project this month, man, that just sounds so overwhelming. So what I'm going to recommend is that you set goals that are attainable so that they don't seem overwhelming to you. So setting goals that you perceive as being unattainable is worse than setting no goals at all, because what happens is you say, well, I'm never going to get that done. That's just too much work. So if you set up reasonable, achievable goals at various points in the planned duration of your project, you give yourself a little bit of breathing space, and you realize that it doesn't all have to be done at one time. It's also important that the goal have some sort of a measure. How will you know when it's done? This can be anything. The goal is 5 new prints by the end of week 4. The measure is counting 5 new prints. That's pretty simple. But it's critical that you have a way to measure your progress, something that you can measure so that you know where you're going and you know how far it is that you've gotten along in the progress of your project. So set up a grid to set up goals and intervals throughout your project. You don't have to make the grid real fancy, but set up goal at one column of the grid, by when at another column of the grid, and how you're going to measure it. And you don't have to do 10 of them, just do 3 or 4 so that you have some sort of goal. By the second week, you'll have completed the process of building the sets for your project, or by the third week, you'll have printed 10 photographs out of this project. So again, put these items on your calendar. Put them in your calendar so that you remember when they're due, because otherwise they kind of slip away. So if you put them in your calendar in the same way that you put other activities in your life, the kids' band concert or anything else that you have coming up, anything that you can calendarize so that you know that this is when it's due, and you know that if you blow off that 30 minutes that you've carved out of your day to create artwork, to make photographs, to print photographs, to work at the computer, sequencing images, to go out in the field and make photographs, then that time becomes sort of a non-event. So it's very important that you have this sense of time. So the next and sort of final part of this is skills and needs, your skill set. What do you already know that you can apply to the project? And what do you need to know to be able to complete the project the way you envision it? What materials do you need to procure to get the project done? Another part of the planning process is making sure you have the resources you need. These can be things you already have, or things you need to acquire. But in either case, you need your list to contain items that you know you will need to complete this project, and then compare them against your stock of intellectual and physical supplies. If you're on a deadline, you don't want to wait until the week before the project needs to be completed that you realize you need to learn how to cut mats, or you need to learn to use a software application, or buy printer paper and buy picture frames. The stuff the stuff you need most usually is the stuff that has a steep learning curve or a long back order list. And I'll bet that a lot of you chuckle at that, because I'm sure that many of you have been trapped into the same situation I've been in, where the week before you need to mount the exhibition, you discover that you don't have the frames you thought you had, and now it's hard to find them. So, interestingly, in order to do this part of the planning, you need to know what form your project is going to take. So that's why that earlier part of the planning process, the passion and mission, has to come first. For example, the answers to the questions that I'll give you in a second will be different depending on whether you're creating a set of matted prints in a portfolio box or a DVD-based slideshow. You have to know where you're going to go before you start your project. So, to prevent unexpected surprises as you complete or near completion of your project, begin to answer these questions. What skills and techniques do you already have that you can apply to this project? Have you done a project like this one before? If yes, what successes and or mistakes did you have? And again, writing this stuff down is really important. Even if it's just jotting it down in a corner of a piece of paper, it's important to have an understanding of things that succeeded before and things that didn't go so well. What resources do you have already that you can use for this project? List some skills that you know you will need for this project. List some materials you know you will need for this project, and think about those skills that you already have. But more importantly, and this one catches an awful lot of people by surprise, what resources do you need to obtain? When will you need them, and how much will these items cost? So break that down into two different things. Skills, when do you need those skills by, and how much cost will there be, both in terms of time and in terms of money? So if part of your skill set is to learn how to use, Adobe's Lightroom software or Apple's Aperture software, how much will the software cost to obtain it, and how long do you estimate it will take to get yourself up to at least sort of basic speed on that software package? So what resources do you need to obtain, and when will you need them, and how much will these items cost? So again, a 3-column grid. The skill, column 1, by when, column 2, and then the cost, both in terms of time and money, in column 3. Similarly, materials. What materials will you need to obtain? Certainly all of us will have some materials on hand, but what materials might you need to obtain? When will you need them? And then what will the cost of those materials be? And both in terms of obtaining the materials, how long will it take, and then also in terms of money. So, for example, if you were thinking about doing a still life photographic project that involved long exposures and potentially moving objects, you'd probably need a tripod if you didn't already have one. So, when will you need the tripod? How long will it take to obtain that tripod? And then also, how much is the tripod going to cost you? So those three things, the material, when do you need it, and then the cost. Frames, and frames are one of the big ones. And I know that a lot of you are out there nodding who have mounted exhibitions before, that you were just stunned at the material cost for matting and framing a body of work to place into an exhibition. And you didn't plan for it, you didn't estimate for it, and probably, like I mentioned before, you didn't plan ahead enough for it in terms of getting the material when you need it. So you may need to adjust your daily time expenditure for the project to put more time in at certain places where you will need to create some time to learn a software package, or to learn how to do lighting for a project, or any of those kinds of things. And then, of course, planning for errors. Nothing in the world works according to plan all the time. Taking into consideration things that might go wrong and planning ahead for them in order to avoid having them be totally unexpected surprises is a big part of this. So add in a little fudge factor, a little padding into your project planning so that you have some idea of how long things are going to take. What errors can happen during the production of the project? How can my project be derailed or slowed down? What steps can I take to plan ahead for potential problems? So let's say your project involves shooting models, and one of your problems is obtaining models, finding models that are suitable for your project, and maybe you can't find them. Maybe the person you need or want to photograph is not available at that particular time, or maybe they live far away and you need to coordinate schedules with them in order to arrive at a mutually agreeable time. So again, don't forget to put these project time and goal dates into a calendar. Calendarizing all of this stuff makes it a whole lot easier to figure out how to do this project and how to make sure that the time that you're making for yourself to be a creative person is time that is well spent. So thanks for joining me on this slightly longer than normal episode of Camera Position. I am in the process of preparing for my very exciting first workshop experience in Tuscany. I leave just a few days from the time that the podcast here will be posted, and I am really excited about it, and I'll hopefully be posting either some blog posts or, with any degree of luck, some podcasts from Tuscany as the students and I work through the process of learning about a personal vision and trying to apply that to the marvelous landscape and hill towns of Tuscany. So until that time, I look forward to joining you on the next episode of Camera Position, a podcast about the creative side of photography. Camera Position is a proud member of the Photocast Network, your photo resource in the potosphere. photocastnetwork.com